Don't you worry, the clip's about to begin, but don't forget to subscribe. Or else, don't make me turn this website around.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm okay. I hope you guys
I really wanted...
Are you okay?
I'm doing fine. I really wanted him to give me just like one concrete example of what he's upset about from the far left. Because, first of all, I mean, I think Andrew and I are probably fairly far left, or at least leftish for sure. So I'd like to know if it was something that we agreed with, because then we could have had a conversation. But it could be that he's objecting to something way out on the far left that neither of us agree with, and we could have come together. But he's decided to say his mind's made up. So go. I won't put a gun to your head. You can vote for Trump.
No conversation.
Anyway, how can we help today, Jeff?
Hey, so I've agreed with you, Matt, for damn near 99% of the time, and
you're right.
This
99% of the time,
it kind of chapped me. You called the First Amendment auditors idiots, and I understand why. I understand that there are some jackasses out there that just are flaunting the shit out of their cameras and bugging the shit out of people.
I have a question.
But yes.
I have a question. When did I call First Amendment auditors a name?
Last week. I went over it just to check, make sure.
Sure. But so what are we pointing to when we say First Amendment auditors? Because I was pointing to the self-appointed Proud Boys and others who think that they can run around with any sort of officialness and police the elections. As a matter of fact, there was a story of a guy just a couple hours ago on Alex Jones' show who runs a militia who is saying that they're going to be at the polls to protect Trump and they're willing to kill Democrats if necessary. I have no problem with officially appointed government auditors, poll watchers. Those people I don't have a problem with.
Yeah, like officially appointed, and also it seemed like it was more directed at the First Amendment auditors, the ones that have actually changed. There's a court case that went through a few years ago, Turner versus Driver.
You're talking about the guys. You're talking about the guys that run around with cameras being jackasses to people in order to show that they can be jackasses to people, and they think they're educating people in the first. Yes, those people are in fact jackasses. Okay, now I understand. I thought we were talking about.
That's where I disagree with you, because they are making sure that. So our First Amendment right isn't there to say nice things. It's there to basically object and to be to have our voices heard.
Jeff, they're not objecting
when they're out there gathering evidence of authoritarianism.
They're not
by the police force, by the government, or by.
They're not. They're not doing what you think. I literally, hang on. I just watched a video of a guy and his son who stood out in front of a post office in a small town, pointing their camera at the post office.
Correct.
They did.
Correct. I absolutely agree with you. There are some that are out there that are jackasses, but then there's others that are actually, you got to be able to expose the authoritarianism of what you were just talking about like 5 minutes ago, where we have these parties, these people that think that their government, the building that they work in, is their home. It's not their home. It's our home. It's our, whether it's City Hall, whether it's the library. I agree with you going in there like a jackass. I agree with you. Some of them are just fucking jackasses, and they're not actually swaying the tide of like being like, hey, what we're actually doing that for is to call out the bullshit that's going on, where our elected officials or our government workers aren't aware of the laws that are there, and then they think that they can just push you around and be able to
Jeff,
law versus I'm getting a little tongue tied here. It's
Jeff, the thing is, the fact that people who may work in the government and otherwise are ignorant of the law is a problem that we need to solve through education and through the government. We don't need to solve it by citizens taking it upon themselves to go and create problems in order to expose and educate someone about the law. If you are going into a post office and disrupting the business there because you Let me finish. Because you learned something about the First Amendment, and you are so desperate to show everybody how much you know about the First Amendment by correcting them on their ignorance of the First Amendment, you're still a fucking jackass.
No, I'm getting past that. Okay, so do we have a problem with police authoritarianism basically killing people just out of just whether it's their skin color or whether, they're gun-happy, trigger-happy officers out there, correct?
Correct.
We have a huge movement going on. And so what they're doing is they're not going there to educate people on the First Amendment. Fuck that. That's not what it's about. It's about exposing the bad officers, exposing the ones that are
we're talking about two different things, Jeff. Jeff, we are talking about two different things. Okay, so part of law enforcement is to instill not only laws, but also our rights, and to recognize that our rights are there instilled in the Constitution. So one of the few things that we have that is as mentioned as even a business is press. We are all allowed to film whatever it is, or gather evidence, or talk and publish whatever it is that we are seeing. And the more evidence we have of, cops, God forbid, killing people, but it happens. But if there's also the second part of it where it's we're trying to expose ones that are actually, you can get a sense of you have a great officer. You have an officer that is absolutely pinpoint on. Yes, go ahead. Andrew said that you said something that wasn't true, and I wanted to let him chime in on what is or isn't true.
Well, I mean, it was a little bit of a side. I mean, it's a little bit of a side issue. I mean, you don't have the right to publish whatever you want just because there's a right to free press. I mean, the First Amendment protects 6 different rights. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition their government for a redress of grievances. 6. Probably can't see them all. Amy Coney Barrett, by the way, can't do that. Those are all and can be limited in certain ways by the government in certain circumstances. They enshrine a higher right, the right to the freedom of thought, without mentioning it, that can't be limited. So to say that you have the right to publish and say whatever you want is just, I mean, that's just not true. It was a little bit of a side issue.
Well, I believe it was a case. I looked at that from 1972. There was a case. I can't remember the name of it, but I remembered the year. But it was basically, it doesn't matter the size of the publication. And yes, of course, you're going to run into libel laws where, but this is actually just videotaping from public.
Yeah, I know. I'm pointing out that those rights are not unlimited. You can't go into a military base and film whatever you want.
Into a theater and yell fire and stuff like that.
You can't do that if there's a fire. You can't do it when there's not a fire. I mean, that's a bad example, but the point is, all those rights are limited can and should be limited in some circumstances. We want that to be the case. Child porn is probably the best. That you don't get a right to publish it, even though you could have press right, speech right, all that. You don't get it. It's illegal. We all agree that that's not a right. So, I mean, there are common sense, good limitations on all of these rights from time to time. I personally have not heard of the First Amendment auditors. I was trying to look them up on my phone a little bit there. I saw a link to a sovereign citizens thing. It sounds different than what you're talking about with trying to police the police. Those sound like different things to me. But I'm this is new for me, and I hate the sovereign citizens rabbit hole.
It's one thing for people to record incidences of wrongdoing and to use that to expose. That is not what we're talking about with First Amendment auditors. First Amendment auditors are people who are going out to intentionally provoke in order to get footage to share in order to make a point about rights. That means that they're out there.
Not necessarily.
Oh, for fuck's sake. What do you mean not necessarily? Please explain to me what First Amendment. Please explain to me what First Amendment auditor is not intentionally going out to cause a scenario in order to get the footage to expose what's wrong with it, because that's not an auditor if you're not doing that.
Okay, correct. So the point of an audit is to basically to expose either you're doing it correct or you're doing it wrong. And so, and it's never by appointment. And so we as citizens have a right to show up at any time and practice our journalism. Now, I agree with you that
Jeff, yes. I'm going to put you on mute. No one is saying that you don't have a right. No, First Amendment auditors have a right to go out and be a jackass. I'm not disagreeing with that. They can, in fact, go out and be a jackass, and I have every right to point out that they're being a jackass. Because if they are intentionally creating a disturbance, if they are intentionally creating a scenario in order to show whether or not the police do it wrong, then they are distracting police from the real fucking issues that need to be addressed, and not whether or not you or your buddy can pull out a fucking video camera and get a dumbass cop to say the wrong thing after you get up in his face. This is beyond stupid to be arguing about. Are you hanging up on me or am I hanging up on you?
Oh, I will discuss it with you another day, sir. I
doubt it. I doubt it highly.
Past that moment, but
I doubt it very highly. Sure. Matter of fact, I'm making the call for you because I got one more call to get to before we start doing super chats and run out of time. So I'm sorry that you haven't run up against these people before, Andrew. So for clarity,
if it's sovereign citizen type stuff, I try to avoid that rabbit hole because it's just, it's just so frustrating to an attorney and a constitutional attorney, I think.
And there's people in the chat that are like, Matt, using your right is not creating a disturbance. I don't run around with a camera filming me exercising my rights. Neither do most people. Hey, look, I'm getting ready to put my thing in here and I'm legally allowed to do that. I had cops come to my house after I was threatened at a gas station and the cop decided to be a jackass and I was ready to ask him to leave. The First Amendment auditors aren't warriors of freedom. The fact that the general population is ignorant of what their rights are and should be is a cause for concern and we should be educating them. But you could film the exact same video with actors teaching this and not interfere with people who are actually there to do a job. Now,
I have a job.
Yeah.
I have a day job because the government is made up of people who are flawed and don't often know what the law is and sometimes intentionally violate it. Like I enforce the First Amendment as a private citizen for a living, but we do it primarily at the day job at the place that I'm not going to talk about because we got all political, because we do it through education. Like I write a letter and explain this is why what you did was wrong. Here's what the law actually says. Here's what you do in the next place. I mean, there are ways to deal with these issues. Anyway, again, I'm talking about that which I don't know about, which is stupid. But
when a school board breaks the rules, you can either get a hold of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Americans United, or some other organization, American Atheist, whoever. And the first thing that they do is write a letter. The first thing that you guys don't do is say, let's get a camera and go jumping into this thing. That is the sensationalizing of this that actually can be, in fact, be counterproductive.
Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.